you. Hello and a very warm welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with your host, that's me, Rosie Gill-Moss, and joining me from Glasgow today, I've got Jackie Rees. Welcome, Jackie.
Hi, Rosie.
Thank you ever so much for having the brass tacks to come on here, because it does take a certain amount of bravery to sit across from me and tell your story. So I'm always very grateful to people for putting their faith in me to do this. Now, I know the bare bones of your story from your application, because as I often do, as I always say to my guests, I prefer to hear it directly from you rather than to read it. So David, your husband, was 46 when he died back in 2022, which actually isn't that long ago. It's about 2.5 years, isn't it? That's not that long.
It's not. So, it isn't.
Yeah, exactly this. A lifetime, but no time at all. So I'm going to just get you, Jackie, to tell me a little bit about David. I like to kind of find out how you guys met and what your life was like. I don't want it to just be about his death, which is obviously the primary reason you're here. But just so before we go, did you have any children together?
No, we had no kids. It was a joint decision, kind of not to have children. We did have we had a cat who passed away just a few months before David. We'd had him for 10 years socks. It was so great run starting in that November. But I've got another little rescue cat.
Have you?
That I'll probably tell you about later.
Oh please, I've got cats. And actually my cat that I'd had since university, and he was a really grumpy kind of part feral cat called Mog, and he loved Ben, and he died a couple of months after Ben died. But I can just remember at the time feeling absolutely nothing, because I was like, it's a cat. However, if any of my cats now died, I'd be devastated.
Yeah.
So anyway, enough cat talk for now. So Jackie, tell me a little bit about you and David. Tell me your love story. Tell me what happened that ultimately led to you being a member of this shitty club that we're in.
Yeah, sure. So we met. I had to double check this. That's pretty bad, isn't it? But it was.
I won't cross reference. Don't worry if it's wrong.
It was 2002. So I was 20. Quick calculation, about 23. He was 3 years older. So we kind of met online, but not really. It wasn't like online dating or anything like that. It was if you remember the magazine Kerang, for me, So we were both kind of rock metal fans, and we posted on the message board.
That's quite cool.
I know they actually, this was mentioned at the when we got married, about how we met, and everybody just burst out laughing. And I think just because we were one of the few people who were like from Glasgow area, so kind of got talking, and then it turned out David actually knew some people that I knew from where I was from. So he kind of asked me if I wanted a ticket for a gig. And I said, I couldn't make it actually, that's the case. But I said, don't think that, I'm just saying, that's the brush off kind of thing. So after that, we just got chatting and agreed to kind of go on a date. Went to the pub. He drove. At the time, I lived kind of outside of Glasgow, about 35 minutes away. And we'd had such a good night, lots of chat, that I'd missed the train home. So he had to drive me all the way home, which was very, very sweet of him. So after that, just kind of started, with a lot in common. And before you know it, I'd kind of moved myself in to his bachelor pad.
Starts with a toothbrush.
Yeah, exactly. So he had a boys' flat. It's fair to say. He was very much loved his music, and I can't not mention Star Wars. Absolutely massive Star Wars fan, like proper. Really kind of went on
proper nerd.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I did, I like geeky stuff too, but probably not quite to the level that he did. So we just kind of started, getting our lives together, getting jobs. He was in IT. I worked in accountancy and tax. Such a fun area. We actually briefly worked together in the same company. that I got the job after we had been dating. So quite a lot of people thought that was where we met. And so we overlapped slightly through working in the same office for a while, but we weren't, I was on one floor, he was on the other, so we weren't, working and then, coming home together. So yeah, so we just we had a lot in common. We loved to travel, so we started once, the student loans and everything paid off. It was get a nice holiday each year, so we loved like going to America, city breaks, New York, absolutely favourite place. We went 3 or 4 years in a row, I think. He wasn't so much of a kind of beach holiday kind of person. I go anywhere. I love traveling. I will go anywhere. But he loved kind of going to the States and doing all that kind of stuff. So yeah, pretty kind of no headlines, just a nice kind of like holidays and buying stuff and for the odd drink and dinner and nothing absolutely groundbreaking. We bought
but a really nice life, like a inverted commas, a normal happy life.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
So we at this point we'd been out together for about. We bought our house in 2015. Still not engaged at this point, and it's quite
dragging
funny.
His feet.
Yeah. So it was weird because I wasn't. It didn't really bother me either. I don't know. I'm an only child. Maybe I'm just kind of used to always being, kind of my own person, and then, kind of like, well, if we get married, we get married. If we don't, we don't. We've got a house together and that sort of stuff. So I think people thought, after that was 13 years and there was still no engagement. So, I think his family and my friends and everything probably thought this is never happening.
So how did he propose in the end then? Was it a surprise?
No. Well, it was this is not the most romantic of stories, but we were basically pretty drunk in the garden one Easter weekend, and we were kind of like talking about stuff and people getting married, and it was that sort of, we never did, maybe we should we? And it was and then they were like, yeah, okay, let's do it. It was literally like that. So the next morning I remember I got up and I said, look, I'll give you an out, if that was just the beer talking. And he was like, no, let's straight into town, pick the ring. So that was 2019. So it was quite a while down the road. I think when I texted some of my friends, the reactions were I nearly crashed the car in shock, and it just kind of surprised everybody, I guess. But weirdly enough, 2019 was also the year that David found out about his heart condition. So it is a congenital condition. He had what was called a bicuspid aortic valve.
God, I won't want to don't make me repeat that one.
No, I can write it. I can send it. So I had obviously never heard of this, and we found out totally by chance. So he'd had trouble with his shoulder, and it was like a frozen shoulder, been in physio, and it was just not getting any better at all. So he kind of thought, right, I'm going to use my private medical through work and get this seen to. So by the time even that moving along, it took a while, and he got sent for his like pre-op checks, and I think one of them must have been an ECG. And about a day or so after, he got a phone call from the hospital saying that they saw something a little weird on the ECG. Did he know, like, was there anything, that he hadn't told them about? And he said no. So they said, well, we would like you to have a few more tests so we can find out what it is. So was sent for like an echocardiogram, so it's like the the ultrasound of the heart. And I went with him. This was around about April 2019, and he came out of the room and was like, oh, and I was like, what's wrong? I was just not expecting, maybe something like, oh, you've got to you know,
cut back on the chips
to do
a bit,
with cholesterol or something, you know, something. And he said, no, he said, apparently I've got a heart defect. And I was like, all right, okay. And he said that I was born with. So we were really quite shocked. Obviously, the first thing you do is Google
oh God,
what
yeah.
it is. And I was kind of like, right, okay. So in layman's terms, you know, of what I can describe it, so that you know, the main valve for your heart has usually got 3 kind of flaps, I think it's called, that make it pump effectively. So if you're bicuspid, you're born with only 2. So basically, over the years, the heart has to work harder to pump as effectively as everybody else. So at this point, he was 43, going to be 44. So we saw the consultant, and he was kind of like, right, we grade this. So basically, what the condition then causes is something called aortic stenosis, which can affect a lot of people. It's very common in older people and can happen just through, you know, wear and tear in life. But when it happens in people in, you know, that age group, it's usually caused by some kind of defect, a genetic thing. So we saw the consultant, and he said, you know, eventually, at some point, you will probably need surgery. So it's heart valve replacement is what needs to be done at some point. But
my mum's had that done, actually.
Yeah. Well, so had his gran, actually. So we'd wondered if it was maybe came from that side of the family, but I don't think hers was. I think hers was through old age, because she was certainly older by the time it happened. But he said, you know, we grade it. So at the moment he's in the lowest grade, so kind of mild or whatever. So he said, I don't see any, you know, cause for concern at the moment. What we do is we put them onto screening at this point, so just checkups. And he said it's usually 5 years at this point when you're in the lower grade. That's what the NHS guidelines are. But obviously, you kind of, if you notice anything happening in between, then obviously you would see your GP. So kind of comforted a bit, I think, by that. You know, that's the consultant talking. You know, you're thinking, well, okay, he's still young, reasonably healthy. This is something that, yeah, maybe it's going to cause problems, you know, further down the line, but it sounds like it can be treated.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing here. I'm hearing it's not brilliant, you know, to know that you've got a problem with your heart. Nobody wants to hear that, but you haven't gone in and been told that it's, you know, stage 4 cancer. You're told it's the least life-threatening that it could be at this point. I think, you know, you'd probably be feeling at this point, okay, you know, perhaps we'll make some lifestyle choices and we could be looking at something further down the line. But you certainly, I wouldn't at this point have been, you know, anticipating being widowed sort of fairly quickly.
Absolutely not. It wasn't. Even Googling, you know, and obviously, you know what it's like. You end up coming across the worst case scenario.
Oh, I'm always dying, always.
Yeah. So, you know, and it did say that it's a dangerous condition, you know, and when it gets to a certain level, as we will then find out. But at this point, you know, as I say, quite comforted that, you know, he's got no problems at the moment, nothing to worry about. And I did remember saying to the consultant, 5 years, it seems quite a big gap. And he's kind of like, well, usually when it's at this, that's the pattern of, you know, obviously it's a guideline, so it can't be everybody will not fit the guideline, but the pattern they see of evolvement, the condition evolving is kind of over that time period.
Okay. So what then? I mean, there wasn't 5 years between this appointment and him dying. So obviously something happened. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so so we got engaged. We planned to get married in 2020, but we all know what happened in that year. Yeah, so that was postponed. So the wedding was postponed for a year. We just had a small wedding with 30 guests, friends and family. But in a
micro
really
weddings
nice
are all the rage, you know.
Yeah, we had a really lovely venue in Glasgow called Moor. It's like it used to be an old kind of church, but it's like this just amazing old-fashioned building. So we were fast forward to 2021. So kind of get to the wedding was in September. So round about kind of July, August, we're right in even though it was small, it's still stressful trying to plan everything. So we're at the kind of planning stage of trying to make sure everything's getting ready. And then I think it was just something I think he mentioned in passing. He was like, oh, something about I've been getting chest pains. So I was like, oh. And he said,
such a bloke thing to do, isn't it? To casually drop in chest pains. Yeah.
I know. And I was like, well, what do you think it is? Do you think he said, I think it's the wedding stress, just because he was somebody, he wasn't a stress head, but he did get himself kind of worked up sometimes about things, and a wedding was
bit of overthinker.
Overthinker, absolutely sums him up. So I said, okay, well, keep an eye on it, and if it keeps happening, you need to speak to the doctor. So got through the wedding fine. By this point, I think he was still getting the chest pains. They were starting to get a bit worse. So I said, right, you need to phone the GP. And it was again, we weren't really getting face-to-face appointments.
Still can't down here, like in Scotland. But
well, if you're, I have to say, my doctor's surgery isn't too bad. I'm able to get appointments, but I know some of my friends just absolutely can't. So it's not really much different, to be honest, depending where you are. Excuse me. So eventually, I think the chest pain started to get bad enough that he was like, right, I'm going to have to phone the doctor. Because again, typical bloke, doesn't want to phone the doctor. So the GP referred them to what they call urgent chest pain referral, which out of COVID would normally be, you should be seen within 7 days. So obviously it's not, you're not presenting with, an actual heart attack, but it's serious enough that you need referral. So she said, I'll be completely honest, it is not 7 days at the moment. It's how long's a piece of string. So basically, she gave him I can't remember the name of it, but the spray for angina pain.
Yep.
That you take when it gets kind of that bad. So kind of like, okay, we'll wait until we get an appointment from the doctor and just kind of see how it's going. Progressively, it started to get worse. So it went from just being chest pain to kind of really struggling to, David was reasonably fit. He wasn't a gym bunny or anything, but, he walked quite a lot. And
he could walk up the stairs.
Exactly. Yeah, and he always used to, he worked in a city centre in Glasgow, so he always used to walk in his lunch breaks and things like that. So he liked a good walk. So he was starting to, it was a struggle to walk, up a hill. I was like, that's not right at all. And he was taking this spray, and I was kind of like, oh, should we, why don't we phone the doctor back? No, I've got the appointment. So by this time, the letter came in for the appointment. So this was about October, November, probably the end. By the time he contacted the GP, maybe about September, and then we got the letter through for the appointment in about October, and the date was January for the appointment, and it was a telephone.
I'm just looking at the dates that he died. I'm like, oh. Yeah.
So, and it was a telephone consultation, which I thought was very odd, but anyway. So it was getting more noticeable. I witnessed it a few times when we were out, and I was kind of like, it was starting to get quite nervous, and I was saying to myself, this has to be this condition. That was one of the signs that, the first signs of it, or the first symptoms of it getting to a more significantly dangerous level is chest pain on angina type symptoms, chest pain on exertion and that sort of thing. So starting to get quite worried. But again, I was kind of like, should we go up to casualty? But again, it's COVID. They don't want you turning up unless you were
leg hanging off.
Yeah. So you kind of
feels
did what you had to do.
Sorry, I found myself over talking you then because
No.
the sensation that I'm getting here is like the walls are closing in around you, and you're aware that he's got this condition that, although they've said to you it's very mild at the moment, Dr. Google has told you that the implications are coming down the road, and this, we all know that the impacts of COVID and the devastation it had on so many people, but it's this kind of knock-on effect, because if you're saying that he should have been seen within 7 days, and this is back in September, and then, I mean, obviously I know where the story ends, and I will let you tell it, I promise. But I'm just thinking, I just feels like it's like this sensation of closing in on you and not being able to do anything about it, and that must have been really, really frightening.
That's a really good way to describe it, actually. No, absolutely, it's really, really accurate. Because you feel helpless, it's kind of this, we were coming out. I mean, I suppose by this point, the extreme lockdown was over, but as you say, it was the knock-on effect on the NHS. The backlog was just really bad. So yeah, we were, and I think by this point, though, he told his parents, his mum and dad, actually live round the corner from us, which is handy when we need the cat. So I think we told them, and they were kind of like, right, okay, just keep an eye on him, sort of thing, as you do. And then so we got to kind of like Christmas holidays. I was off during, I think I was off like Christmas and New Year. I think he was maybe working 1 or 2 days. And he sometimes covered Edinburgh as well as Glasgow. So one day he had went through to Edinburgh, and he worked in IT, so he'd taken his laptop, quite heavy, quite bits of cable or whatever IT people carry about with them, in his bag. And I remember he phoned me and said, the office is dead, there's nobody in, I'm just going to come home, so I'm going to go for the train, will you get me at the station? I said, yeah, no problem. So I left, I was driving to the station, and I phoned him just to make sure that he got the train he said he was going to get. And so it rang and rang and rang, and then I think it answered on like the very last ring, and he was kind of like, it was like hello, but it was really quite kind of strange sounding, and I was like, are you all right? And he said, no, not really. And I was kind of like, right, okay, what's happened? So he said, rushing for the train with his bag, from the office to the station, he said, I got on the train and I think I blacked out. So I was like, oh shit. So I said, do you think you blacked out? They said, well, yeah, because I think I've just come to with the phone ringing. So I was like, oh shit. So he was like, oh, it's just probably, not eating something or blood sugar. And I'm like, no, wait a minute, this is probably connected to the condition, if you're actually blacking out during, I'm guessing, exertion of running, for the train with, heavy equipment. So that was maybe like the 27th or 28th of December. So I picked him up, got to the station. He looked terrible. He was like really grey. I wanted to take him out to the hospital, but again, nope, refused. I said, I'll drive you. He said, you can drive me there. I'll just sit in the car. You can't force me to go.
Stubborn old bugger.
Oh, he really was. You can't force me to go. I'm like, right. And he says, you're winding me up and making me feel worse. I was like, right, okay, fine.
Oh, that's so frustrating, because of course he's a grown adult. You can't force him to go in.
No.
Excuse me, sorry.
And I think I think there's a little bit of denial kind of creeping in at his end. I think he knows this is bad, but he's kind of like, urgh.
Yeah. And the brain is very, very clever, isn't it? They'll put all sorts of scenarios in your head to avoid the one that it might be. And I think men tend to shut down because they are frightened and they don't want to say they're frightened.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And he might not want to have shown to me that he was scared as well. Didn't want me to worry or anybody else to worry. But but he did, to be fair. So that was maybe like the 28th, and then so we had New Year. We went to his sister's house, and I think he did tell his family then that had happened on that day, so they were starting to get quite worried too. So kind of start of January, I went back to work. So did he. And then the Friday, it was like maybe the 5th or 6th of January, I can't remember what the actual date was the day he had this telephone call with the hospital. So he's sitting at home waiting to do it. They were supposed to call at 9 a.m. Got to like 10:30, still hadn't called. So he's like, right, I'm going to go into the office, and I'll just go into a room if they call. I said, right, okay, fine. So maybe about an hour or so later, he phones me. I have to go out to the hospital. I said, well, that doesn't surprise me, because how were they going to diagnose you over the telephone? But yeah, so he was sent out to like the Glasgow Royal Infirmary, and so he went there. So at this point, I guess what I'm expecting to happen is them to say, yeah, this has got worse. We're now at the point that we might need to intervene, but come home and take it easy, and we'll schedule you in, because that seemed to be what kind of happened with this surgery. Because one strange thing was that there was a work colleague of mine who actually had the same condition, but he had been diagnosed as a child, so he'd always been under the care of a cardiologist. And basically that's what he said. He said throughout his 30s into his late 30s, they were kind of like, yeah, we're going to intervene now. Oh no, wait a minute, we think it's still too early, because there's like a point you want to do it.
Okay. And you can't do it I don't know whether it's the case or if I'm making this up, but I'm sure for my mum, they could only do it once. So it was a kind of like, we've got to kind of get you as far as possible before we do it. Yeah,
that's exactly it. They want it to last as long as possible, because the options are either a mechanical valve, which has a lifespan, or which lasts longer, but you need to take like blood thinners.
Yeah, that's what my mum's got. She takes warfarin. We always kept telling her she had a pig's heart, but she doesn't. But that's a family in joke.
Yeah, and the other option is obviously you can get animal, but they don't last as long. And then somebody in their 40s, the chances are it's not going to last as long as they would hope. So I thought, okay, that's probably what's going to happen. So about must have been about 2 o'clock that afternoon, my phone went. I missed the call, as I do, because my phone's usually on silent.
Same.
So I saw the number, and it was like the 0800 number, and I thought, I think that's the number it comes through when the NHS call you. It's like a set number. So when I googled it, it said, yeah, Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health NHS Glasgow, and I thought, okay. So I phoned his mobile, and I was like, and the nurse answered his phone, and I was like, okay. And she said, oh, I tried to phone you. I said, yeah. And she said, we're admitting David. And I was like, all right, okay, but this is going to sound ridiculous. I could hear him in the background, like, I'm not staying in here.
Was he? He was still being really stubborn.
Yep. I was like,
I bet the nurses loved it. Loved it.
I know. It was like, I'm not staying in here over the weekend. Just the typical guy. And I was like, oh, for God's sake. So she was the cardiac nurse. So she came on and she said, I spoke to him on the phone that morning. He described his symptoms, and I told him to come out immediately. So she says, we've done ECGs. We got the consultant in to look at it, and he wasn't happy at all with what he saw. I was like, right, okay. So she said he is going to need immediate surgery. The replacement needs to be done as quickly as possible, because it has now reached the critical stage. And I was like, but it's only been 3 years, and he was told he was at the opposite, the very non-critical.
Like, hang on a second.
Exactly. So at this point, it was kind of like, right, okay, you're being kept in, need to pack a bag for you and that sort of thing. But what made it even more difficult was in Glasgow at this point, there had been another kind of rise in COVID cases. So they actually, the hospitals stopped having visitors again.
Oh no!
So I wasn't able to visit him.
Oh my gosh, that really gets me. That does, because obviously a different scenario. But when John was in hospital with COVID, that was the most challenging thing, was just not being able to be near him at a time when they needed you.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm really sorry. That's horrible. Did you manage to get in at all?
No.
No. Oh,
the ironic
God.
thing is, I was actually going to, the day he died was the day that I was going to be allowed to see him for the first time.
Oh my God, the universe is so horrible sometimes.
Yeah.
And how quickly did it have? Sorry, I'm sort of jumping around really, but I really, this feeling of not being able to be with the person that you love when they at their darkest moment, and in your darkest moment as well. I find that really, really heartbreaking. So he's gone in on sort of the Friday, Saturday, was it? He's gone into hospital, and then what happened from there?
So he ended up actually being in for about 2 weeks. So when I had spoken to the nurse, I got the impression that they were going to try and do the surgery like that next week. But what happened, as you say, the kind of universe works against you. You couldn't make up some of the things that happened. So you probably know this from your mum's surgery, but when you're getting heart surgery, you have to make sure your teeth are tip top, and that you don't have, because if there's any problems at all with teeth, the infection goes straight to the heart.
Did you know? I didn't know that.
Oh, did you not?
No, I didn't know. It was quite a long time ago. My mum had the operation. I think it might have been 20 years now. So my retention of knowledge. But no, I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So again, because it had been COVID, we hadn't been able to see a dentist, and he knew that he had, because he'd had this filling that had come out, and he was like, putting a temporary filling and things like that. And so we had to wait for, I can't remember how many days it was, for him to see the hospital dentist, and they wouldn't let him have the surgery until this had been done. So he came, and the dentist said, oh, no, 2 teeth need to come out. So we're like, right, okay, so this is going to delay the operation even longer. But they said, in terms of the risk, it was riskier not to have, it's too risky not to have the teeth taken out.
At what point, Jackie, were you going to go in with a pair of pliers and some paracetamol and just be like, I'll just deal with this?
Yeah, it almost did get to that point, because I think there was like, his tooth extractions were cancelled maybe once or twice. We roll into the next week, he gets the teeth out, that's fine. The next thing that happened is that he ended up with some kind of, it was like, they were calling it gout, but it was like basically his knee all went up, like really swollen and hot. Yeah, exactly. I know. And this is what makes me, one of the things, I mean, whole things obviously really upsetting, but this is one of the, the things I play over my head a lot, is how just utterly, I was going to use a really good Scottish word here, but then
go on.
It's called scunnered.
Scunnered. I like
it. So scunnered, it just basically means you're just done. You're just like, I'm sick of this. And I think that's how I felt that he felt. Just all the delays, not being able to have any visitors. I think he was moved ward about 3 times. And the other people in the ward, it was just, I think the whole experience was just horrible. And it's one of the things, that I feel so bad, is that's, I mean, none of us knew that was his last days at the time, but thinking that's how he spent his last days, in there, not being able to see anyone and just being so fed up, it's really upsetting.
And I think also there's again, I'm projecting here, but one of the things I've written down is like feeling like you're not important, because you've got this heart condition, you've now been told it's really urgent and it's got to be dealt with, but hang on a minute, we've got to do your teeth, that's getting cancelled. I suppose you would feel very much like not a priority, which must be quite demoralising in that scenario, because you want to feel like if your life is hanging in the balance, that this NHS that we, and I'm always quite careful not to slag off the NHS, because
no, I know.
but there are so many failings within it that it's impossible not to cover it, especially in what I do here, because late diagnosis and cancelled operations, unfortunately, are what brought many people into this club before their time.
Absolutely.
And I think nobody sort of thinks, oh, the world revolves around them, but actually in that time of crisis, when you're on your own, to then be constantly being pushed to the back of the line, that would take its toll on your kind of esteem and your mental health as well. And then add in the additional cruelty of not being able to even see you. And it must have been very lonely for him as well.
I think so. So we FaceTimed each night, and, you know, we had quite a few arguments, as you would, because he was so fed up. But you know, I let him go. You know, I just let him vent, and I let him, because, you know, I'm sitting in the comfort of my home. I'm not going to, you know, have a go at him when he's going through what he's going through. And I knew a lot of it was just frustration.
Fear as well. And fear can come out absolutely. As anger, can't it?
So, you know, I think by this point, again, so, you know, his family knew, and they were obviously concerned, but I think, you know, I think they were still quite, right, okay, you need this, it's a big operation, but they do it all the time on people of all ages. You know, his gran got it when she was I think she was in her 70s, so it's that way that you think, well, you know, he's 46, you know, sure he'll be fine. So I had kind of, I think I don't know, I've heard some of your guests saying this before, that you almost have like a bit of a sixth sense about things, and I don't know what it was, but I just started to really get quite uneasy with the whole situation, and almost in a way, so I'd been, you know, he was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I had been in the house myself, and I started to think, what if he doesn't come home? And I know I think at the time people were just like, oh, don't be silly, you know, it's a serious operation, but, you know, he's in the best place and he'll be fine, he's fit and strong. But there was just, as time went on, and I started to almost like feel like I had to start preparing myself for the worst.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm not an overly negative person, so that's not my default, you know, kind of, oh my God, the worst's going to happen. I had been, up until that point, I think I'd been fairly, you know, positive about it, but this started creeping in. It was weird.
Yeah. No, I can imagine that, actually. That sort of the positivity as well that you'd have been trying to hold on to around him, around your family. And then as you're getting closer and closer to the date of the operation, that's when those sort of intrusive worries start to sneak in. Yeah. And I think you're right. A lot of people, you know, I mean, I genuinely wished my husband dead on the day that he died, you know, not in any genuine reason, but, you know, you better bloody drown. You know, I'm here dealing with 3 kids on my own. Yeah. And of course, I felt immense shame and guilt for, you know, I don't know why I feel like I can wish people dead in a moment. Obviously, I don't have that power. Otherwise, otherwise it'd be like a string of dead bodies. No, that's not true. I love everyone. But it's the weird stuff that you say. You know, I stood in the school playground. If my husband dropped dead tomorrow, I wouldn't know who we paid the electric to. He was already dead. Like, I think it's so weird when you look back in hindsight and see things. Oh gosh, sorry, Jackie, I've made it all about me again.
No,
carry on.
No, so once the knee flare up had went down, I think what I probably didn't mention this at the time as well. When he was admitted, he was actually put on bed rest.
Oh gosh,
so that was basically because the heart at this point was very precarious. It was very unstable.
See, that's terrifying as well, to know that your heart is so unstable that you have to lay in bed. Exactly. And as much as anything, just being immobilised is really demoralising. Like, it just is, isn't it? We all know we've had a flu. But also that must be very scary, the thought that your heart that has sustained you your whole life is so at risk that you can't even get out of bed. Wow.
Yeah. So he'd had all the tests in the hospital by this point, and they were kind of like, right, okay, so we know what we're dealing with. It was at what they call severe stage, which is absolutely medical intervention has to happen immediately.
God, he took this condition and ran with it, didn't he?
Oh my God, I know.
No mucking around.
I know. I just, And I said, you would be the one that would buck the train.
Yeah.
Not in a good way, unfortunately.
No.
So the only thing there was one more test that was still to be done, and that was the angiogram, so the catheter into the veins. And
is that when they inject the dye?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not to be done. So we have a hospital in Glasgow called the Golden Jubilee, and it's a specialist cardiac and stroke hospital, and it's excellent. It's one of the best in the country. So we're very lucky to have it on our doorsteps. And that's where the operation would have been performed. Anyway, so he was to go there. So he got moved, and he was to go there and get the angiogram. And because the Golden Jubilee is like, it's not a private, it's part of NHS, but it's like its own entity. So it doesn't come under the NHS Glasgow. So it didn't have a no visitors rule. It did allow visitors. So once he was into the hospital, that's when I thought I was going to be able to see him. So he got moved on the Monday, the 24th, and so I was kind of like, an angiogram, okay, it's another test that's probably quite invasive in comparison to everything else, but, I'm sure it will be fine. So I had spoken just on text that day, and he started to, I could really tell by his tone that he was really getting quite concerned at this point. Whether that's because he's had conversations with the doctors and they've been kind of quite frank about how ill he was, and he's not shared that with us because he's probably not wanted us to worry. So I said, will I come out and see? Yeah, you should be able to come out and see me in the evening. And I said, right, okay. And at this point, we were going to discuss, like the operation and, and I do think we would have had the talk, before the heart surgery, because, it's heart surgery, and while it's more often than not successful, there are times it's not. So I think we definitely would have had a quite frank conversation, what if this happened, but we didn't even get that far. Plot twist. So
it's just the gift that keeps giving, isn't it? It's just horrible. I'm so sorry you went through this.
I know. So and it's that weird way, like, as you say, you remember every minute of the moment you find out. So I was still working from home. I think I was still on the laptop. I was pottering about. I remember the chase was on. It was 5 o'clock or 10 past 5. Chase on in the background, and my mobile went. And again, it was a number I didn't recognise, but it was a 0141, which is the Glasgow code. It's a local number. And I thought, okay, better answer this in case it's something to do with the hospital. And sure enough, it was the nurse. And if anybody's ever had the call from the hospital, they always sound completely calm, which I guess is what they have to do. But she was very calm, but she said, very straight to the point, David's went into cardiac arrest. And I was like, what? And they went, during the angiogram. And I was like, what? I think I just kept saying, what? So I was like, right, okay. So she said, he's been worked on, but we would suggest you come out now. So I was like, okay. And then I was just kind of stood there like, I don't understand
Frozen.
What just happened. So just kind of like the adrenaline just suddenly kicks in. At first, I think I ran out and left my front door open, which I run back and
it wouldn't surprise me. Just the blind panic.
Yeah. So as I'd said, his parents lived round the corner. So I think I'd already phoned them actually, and they were like, right, we'll be round. I said, I don't think, I can't drive. And his dad's like, I'll drive. But I mean, he was, obviously quite worried as well. And I remember we got in the car and they were like, what did they say? And I said, they said they're working on him, but we need to come out. And then we went, okay. So I said, cardiac arrest. And they were kind of like, right, okay. And I said, and I've got quite a few friends that are, doctors and nurses. But again, just through, you watch TV and you learn things. I said, you do realise what a cardiac arrest is as opposed to a heart attack. So I think that was the part at first his mum and dad were not, maybe they were kind of like, oh, right, wait. So, his heart stopped. He is, to all intents and purposes, dead at this point. So it was about 20-minute drive to the hospital. It was horrible. It was January. It was dark. Weather was terrible. Traffic was terrible. It's the worst. That way. It was
every
about
red
20
light.
minutes. It felt like about 4 hours.
Yeah.
So we got there and hospital was empty because there was no visiting really. So we went in and they were like, "All right, okay, if you wait here, the nurse will see you in the relatives room." So I was just like, "Oh, that's it. They're going to tell us he's dead." I said, "You don't get taken to the relatives room unless the worst has happened." So I just was blurting this out, like totally like. So the nurse did come in, and at this point he wasn't, but he was still being worked on. So we were there for about 5 hours. So what they were trying to do was get him onto a machine called an ECMO machine, which I had never heard of. So it's even more, they only have them in certain hospitals in the UK, and luckily we have one in Glasgow because it is the heart hospital, but it's more advanced than a life support machine.
Right.
From what I've learned, and I think they put quite a lot of COVID patients went on to ECMO because it basically completely supports the heart and the lungs, and it tries to allow all the organs to kind of rest.
Because I'm thinking here, like if he's in a cardiac arrest for such a long time, there's all the additional things that will be going through your mind of, okay, so even if he survives this, who would be coming home to me?
Exactly.
Would he
Absolutely.
be? Yeah.
So so they were kind of like, we'll work on him, but they checked in maybe twice, and and they're, as you would know, and as you may know, they're very honest. The medical professionals, they don't give you any false hope.
There's no fluff, is there?
No, but it's the right thing to do,
yes.
Because I was kind of like, just tell me, what I don't want, 30%. I just like, is there a chance? Yes, there is a chance he will make it, but it's not a good one. That's basically what they said. So I said, right, okay, I know where I am. At least now I know I've got to expect the worst. I can't say, oh, well, it sounds, like there's a bit of false hope or something like that. So it was very much,
It's written the word hope down, actually, because hope is, talk a lot about needing hope to survive, that it's a really human thing. We need to have hope. But it's a very different circumstances to my loss, but it was when Ben was technically still missing.
Yeah.
And I felt that hope really needed to go, because that would cause me so much more angst in the long term. And to let go of hope is really hard, because it feels like you're letting go of believing in them. But also hope is, yes, it's very important, but it can be quite it could be the thing that destroys you if you believe too much that things might be different.
Yeah, exactly. So we waited, and then about 11 o'clock they brought us in, and they said they didn't actually I don't think they got as far as getting him on to the machine, because everything else that they had done at this point, there was, the blood pressure wasn't coming back up, nothing was responding to any of the treatments, and obviously it had been about 5 hours since it had happened. So it wasn't even a case of for us to decide to switch anything off. It didn't even get that far. So they called us in to tell us he died just about 11 o'clock.
So sorry. I'm picturing you and his mum and dad just having this horrific piece of news delivered to you, and the fact that you will have wanted to support his parents because they've just lost a child, which even at 46, like that's still your child, right?
It is, absolutely.
And you've lost your husband, your partner, your, you know, person that you've built a life with, and for it to happen, because when I read your notes, I said somewhat unexpectedly, and I was like, oh, I'm interested to know what she means by this. And of course, what it is that you knew that there was a health condition, but not one that until it happened that you thought was going to take him from you. And so you've kind of got the, you know, the illness and the sudden death all wrapped up into one traumatic episode.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of kind of, you know, describing it, because it's kind of like I almost had a little bit, I called it like, I kind of, it was sudden, but it wasn't completely out the blue. So it wasn't, you know, you hear some people where they don't know, the person doesn't know they have a heart condition, or you know, and they, you know, out of the blue, they die with no warning at all. And I know there's some people, young widows, who that's happened to. So it wasn't like that, you know. It was like we knew he had this condition, and then him being, you know, in the hospital and needing the urgent treatment, we knew it was serious. But I think we never still expected it to get, you know, we didn't expect that to happen, not then and not at that point. I think the surgery probably would have been high risk given how, you know, unstable his heart was, but you know, for it to happen before you even got to that part was really quite, it was, you know, completely
and you
shocking.
you can't help but think how high risk would it have been if it had been in 6 months prior as well. That must be a really, and there's nothing you can do about it.
No.
The waiting list, but that kind of if only. And I do hear this time and time again. And John's late wife Sarah, she had a genetic condition that increased her likelihood of having gastrocancers, so bowel cancers, that sort of thing. And then she was misdiagnosed with my God, what's the thing that makes you vomit? A vomiting bug. My brain's something like that. Yeah, norovirus. Thank you. this is why I'm other people here. And so she was sent home. And again, you know, he says quite candidly, had she been diagnosed at that point, she might not be in a great state, but she'd be alive. Yeah. And that what if, and of course we live our lives in what ifs. What if I hadn't got Ben to learn to scuba dive on honeymoon? What if he hadn't, what if I'd said don't go today? What if they hadn't changed location of the But I think to have kind of the hope that it was going to be quite an easy fix, and you know, he would need recovery and support, but he was going to be okay. And then almost I'm going to turn on a heartbeat. Terrible use of choice of words there. I do apologise. That it all changes, and just to I find myself really kind of picturing you in that hospital room being told that it's all over, and I guess because I know how that feels. That I'm so sorry. Now, I asked you at the beginning whether you had children, which seems kind of a funny question, but I often ask people because if it's not in their notes, I think it's quite an important part of your story. And I think that often if you have got children, people are kind of more empathetic in a way because they know that you have got bereaved children to support. But actually, when it's just you two, you're going home to the empty house. Like my kids, don't get me wrong, they drove me nuts. But I didn't have time to really dwell on what happened to me. I just had to kind of keep fucking going, really, which is not necessarily always healthy. But I think when it is the two of you and you've made that choice that you just want it to be the two of you, the loss is really, really profound. And I just wondered if you would mind just sharing a little bit about what it was like afterwards, you know, how you managed sort of going back home and the endless administration that comes after. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in quickly because I'm sorry. There's ADHD. The other thing I really wanted to ask you about is you said that just before you were planning to kind of probably have this conversation, and I guess you'd be talking about, you know, whether he wanted to be cremated or, you know, what he wanted, you know, and I guess to have that conversation that you hope is unnecessary. Like my mum, I found a letter that she'd written to us before she went to the hospital. I've never read it, and she destroyed it afterwards. But that is, I guess, the luxury, and I'm using inverted commas there, that we think people who have a terminal illness, I'm trying not to offend anyone here, but the fact that you can say goodbye, the fact that you can find out their wishes, what they want for you in your future. I guess I've always felt a little bit like, if only I'd had that conversation with Ben. And I suppose for you to get so close to being in a position to have that conversation and then not getting a chance. I'm definitely rambling now. I'm going to let you take over.
No, it's fine. No, absolutely. So I'm an only child, and I actually, so I'd lost my dad in 2016. He died in his early 70s of a different heart condition. And unfortunately, my mum was in a care home at the time. She had dementia. So in terms of my side of the family, it was just me. But David's family, I'm really, really close to them. His mum and dad, his sister, brother-in-law, they're all really supportive. They've been like my family, since, I lost my dad and my mum being ill. They've kind of been adoptive parents almost for me, and they still are. And I think that's it's quite a unique situation, because I know, unfortunately, a lot of widows have kind of quite strained relationships with in-laws. And I totally understand, the dynamics and everything. It can be really hard. But, for me, my story is very different. They've been great. They are my family, and, we all supported each other. So I actually stayed with literally, as I said, they're around the corner, so I could come and go between there and my house. But I slept there until the funeral, just because I didn't, just
I want to go home.
No. I didn't want to go home. I didn't, a bit. So, and in terms of, absolutely amazing friends, I've got a great base of friends. Some of them from school days, some of them newer, but really, really great group, and they were amazing. They were.
And you really find out who your friends are, don't you, in a situation like this?
Absolutely. And the care packages, there was one of my friends, she got me like the cook, the cook meals.
This is what I tell everybody to get.
It came delivered, and I know, I was like, that's so thoughtful. It was just amazing. It was just
because it involves no planning, no prep. That I actually buy them now, or Charlie Bigham ones, because I'm really crap. By the time the kids are fed, I will just have something, toast or some crackers. And by having these, I know at least I'm having one proper meal. And I think whoever sent you those cook meals, well done you.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, in terms of support network, I can't fault it. And again, I know that's not everybody's experience, but I do feel lucky in a way that, that I had that, from friends and David's family. My work were pretty good as well. There was no...
I'm going to interrupt you there. I think the fact that you had so much support probably speaks volumes about you. So you said you feel lucky. But if you kind of get what you put out into the universe, and I don't mean your husband dying on you, that's just chance. But sorry. But the fact that people were so willing to help and supportive of you, that's not luck. That's because of who you are. I just wanted to get that in there.
Oh, thank you.
As you were.
Exactly. I hope that's true. And it's not, I'm the first of, my friends that this has happened to. Of course I am, being widowed in your early 40s isn't normal.
It's very alienating, isn't it?
It is. But they were all great. So, my work were pretty good. They gave me the time that I needed. I didn't feel forced to come back. If anything, I reached out to them. It was kind of like, I need to start a bit of routine,
structure,
a bit of that normality. So I think it does. The days do, they pass in a blur, and I remember thinking, this is a weird thing that I had thought about before. But I suppose people think about these things as you were saying about.
Willing my husband dead from the bath.
So I was kind of the same, but it wasn't so much about the practical. It was just more about like, what would I do? Would I just fall to pieces completely? Would I just be, that's it.
What did you expect? What would you have expected to happen?
I didn't expect the reaction that I had, actually. I think I was stronger than I thought I would have been. And I know a lot of it is... It's
a really shit way to test it, isn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of it is kind of, it's, fight or flight. You've got to do it. But, I think once in the longer term, there's a lot of self kind of motivation, or you have to want. I think you have to want to be okay, and you have to want to get through it as well. It won't just come naturally.
Yeah,
it's
I think
something
you're absolutely
that I think you have to work on.
Yeah, it's very much a choice, and everybody that comes on this podcast has made that choice, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. And it's because I notice, obviously, the amount of people I've spoken to now, I do notice that there's a kind of thread of similarity that runs through most people's stories, just however their partner died. And I think this kind of choice to keep going it's a really difficult one. And I personally, if you'd asked me, I would have said I'd crumble, I'd become an alcoholic. I mean, yes, a little yes, but also I remember thinking, I've just got to get up and put my feet on the floor and face whatever comes. Yes, of course, I'd like to pull the duvet over my head with a bottle of gin. Yeah, I'd love to, but essentially I can't. And I think that, I'm reluctant to tell people that they're really strong and resilient, because you kind of get a bit sick of being told that, because you didn't have a choice around it. But I was really surprised how I survived, and I wasn't my best self for the first year, believe me, but all that kind of the chicken and wine phase, that comes to an end, and then you start to make the choices that will define the rest of your life. And it's a monumental loss for me, for my children, for Ben's family, for my family. But I feel very strongly that, particularly for my kids, that it's not the thing that defines who they are. It's a terrible thing that happened to them. And yes, I am a widow. I've sort of made myself a professional widow in this sense, but it isn't the only part of me. And I think when you get stuck into that mentality that awful thing has happened, therefore my life is ruined, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. And you use the phrase there that I actually, one of the first things I said to my friends is, I don't want this to define me. Because I live in the outskirts of Glasgow, kind of really in a little bit of a village, and I'm like, I don't want to be known as the village widow, the young village widow.
This is exactly it. Yeah.
Although very strangely enough, so I know you've mentioned this before with other people. So I joined WE. I think probably everybody does at some point.
It's a good starting point, isn't it? For sure.
Yeah. So luckily enough, when I joined, there was a meetup for the local group very near to me, actually. So even though it was only maybe about 6 weeks, I went, and I think quite a lot of people were really shocked when I said, they were like, oh, and I said, yeah, it was about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and they were like, oh my God. But
you didn't meet Elizabeth Dixon, did you, by any chance?
No, I didn't, but I did meet a really good, so I've got one of a really good friends now. So it turned out, so the girl, her name's Marie, she was the Glasgow coordinator for the area at the time, and she was the first person there, and we went in and sat down, and I said where I was from in this village, and she was like, so am I. So it turns out
no way.
She lives about 3 minutes walk from me, and she lost her husband about 6 years ago to cancer, and we're great friends now. We're really good friends.
Now you're the 2 young widows in the village.
Exactly, and there's actually another man who's with.
Oh, you're just recruiting them now.
I know. But and we always say it's shit the way we had to meet, but we're really glad that we did. Kind of find each other.
some of the most incredible human beings I've ever met have been through my grief. I met my husband, the alive one, and Lulu, who started the podcast with me. She's more like a sister to me. We kind of, we're like a big blended family, and I wish I'd met them under different circumstances. Yeah. Well, I probably wouldn't have met John. That's very complicated. We won't dwell on that.
Yeah.
But it's just gloss over that. But it's because of the people that have, you said here that Maria is the coordinator. So what she's done is she's turned her trauma into doing something good and reaching out into the community. And just by default, I kind of think they're going to be a good person. It's like people who go sea swimming, you know, these ladies that jump in the sea. I always think if you want to get back out there, join something like that, because those people have chosen to go in cold water to make themselves feel better. There's going to be some good running through them, right?
Absolutely.
I say this because I ice bath.
Oh, do you? I did say to my friends, actually, we should do the cold water swimming, and they all just went, no.
I'll do it with you remotely. I don't know if I can get to Glasgow, but if we set up a FaceTime, I'll jump in the sea with you.
The water would be absolutely freezing up.
I bet it bloody would. I bet it bloody would. And have you stayed in the same house?
Yeah.
I don't know why I said house like that. House?
Yeah, I did. It was, I know, again, some people, you know, they want that fresh start, but for me, I love our house. We had just basically almost finished, so we moved in 2015, and it didn't really massively need anything done, but we just chipped away at each room, you know, making it ours. So, you know, we kind of got to that point where we're really happy with the house, and the last thing I wanted to do was leave it. You know, I love it. I love where I live. And there's happy memories here.
And he didn't die in the house, which I think that can also mean that people don't want to live there. I was similar. Our house wasn't our forever home. It was like one that we bought to renovate and then to be able to afford our forever home. Yeah. So I think for me, had it been the next house, it would have been a lot harder. But I mean, as it happened, I decided to stay put and, you know, put the money that I would have spent on moving into doing up the house. And then obviously John and I met and we decided fresh start, you know, both sell our houses and buy one together. But it is a very, very personal thing, and there is no wrong or right, is there? It's entirely what feels right for you.
Exactly.
So what does life look like for you now, Jackie? What's going on for you?
It's all right. I think, you know, as you say, there was definitely, you know, I'm not going to say there wasn't a chicken and wine phase, because of course there was. You know, you don't just skate from the trauma straight into
and if you do, there's something going on underneath.
Yeah, exactly. That's well adjusted. But yeah, it was, you know, I was quite conscious of not letting myself, you know, and again, you know, it's doctor, you know, I do take some medications to help with, you know, the anxiety and things, and I'm not afraid, you know, of that. You know, it's what you need, you know, to help. It's there for a reason. So yeah, I think, you know, I had been lucky. Again, we're saying about, you know, having the friends group. We were still really a good group of friends that we were still quite active socially together, with or without partners. So, you know, I think it didn't, you know, it kind of sometimes, I guess, it can feel like if your friends group is just, you know, friends and partners, and then, you know, one of them dies, and they all either kind of like don't know what to say around you, so it's never really been like that. You know, my friends are my friends, and we're all still, you know, we would always still go out and various, you know, social events, birthdays, Christmas, that sort of thing. So, and two of my really close friends from when I was younger, we go on holidays. So they're both married, and one's got kids, but, you know, nothing wrong with.
I'm actually first in the line to book those flights, Jackie. I'm like, oh, my friend's husband has died. I'm going to have a week away from the kids. Sorry.
Yeah. So we did. I went to Ibiza in the summer. Yeah.
Did you? Did you have a great time? I've never been.
I was really. Neither had I. It was great. Go.
I think me and John might go. We might just go and be sort of, you know, sit in the corner, you know, watching the sunset. I don't think there'll be any night clubbing involved. Yeah, it's actually it just. You say your love of rock and metal music, because John is taking me to see, well, I'm taking him because it's his birthday, but it's at his insistence, Limp Bizkit, and he's trying to persuade me to see Slipknot. I'm like, I like country music. So I'm being indoctrinated slowly. I've actually got a Def Leppard t-shirt on as well, mainly because I liked I suppose it's a leopard, isn't it?
It will kind of ease you into Slipknot, I think.
I'm really not sure about Slipknot. I'm you know, as Meatloaf said, I'll do a lot of things for love, but I don't know if that's one of them. But you know, who knows? I'll kind of see any live music, really. In fact, I'm taking my youngest to see Kylie in Hyde Park next month, because Kylie was my first concert. My parents surprised me with a ticket, and about 10, so I'm taking my 6-year-old. But anyway, I digress. But I think, Jackie, that's been really, really lovely to talk to you today. You've got a really kind of, and I don't want to sound patronising, but like a really positive mindset, because you've got, yes, you could be saying, it's so unfair, poor me, why me? And I'm sure that you do from time to time. But actually, what you're doing is you're continuing to live a full and colourful life instead of this very 2D, you know, I'm a widow now, I must shroud myself and not go on holiday. You know, and funny enough, actually, John went to Ibiza the year after, within a year of Sarah dying. He said he was just going to say yes to stuff, and like some proper lads invited him, and he was so fun. He's there with like these muscle Marys on the beach and stuff. But he said, just, you know, what's the worst that happened? You have a horrible time. The worst things happened, right? You got to try and push the boundaries a little bit.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And as you say, it's you know, I just if it's something that sounds reasonably good fun, I'm like, I'm in.
But also, you get better at saying no to stuff you don't want to do, I think, because you're like, no, I don't want to do that. Life's short. This is something I'm learning is it's no is a valid, because I will over explain everything. Even my counselor's like, why do you feel the need to explain this? Like, oh, have you met me? People pleaser. But anyway, I am going to let you go, because I feel that I probably rabbited on as much as I should. But it's been not at all. You were really, really eloquent and really interesting. And I've made, as always, I made pages of notes. And I will, you will hear from us. Obviously, you'll get your little token in the post. And I know it's an awfully long way, but if we could persuade you to Kent, to Woodstock, we'd love to see you. Otherwise, at some point our paths may cross. You never know. I keep just bumping into widows. I saw a couple over the weekend, and the unexpected joy of this podcast has been the people that I get to meet, and it wouldn't exist without you guys coming on. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming on and bearing your soul. You take care.
It's been lovely. Thank you, Rosie. I really found it quite cathartic.
No one ever wants to say they enjoyed it. It's a process.
I actually did worry I would forget half of everything that happened.
Oh God. And afterwards, you'll probably be like, oh, I didn't mention that, I didn't mention this. But the thing is, you can't condense 20 years of loving somebody into an hour and a half of interview.
Absolutely.
So for anybody else who is listening out there, thank you for listening to us. And if you've got any questions surrounding Jackie's episode, please do let me know and I can pass them on. But for now, from the bottom of our broken hearts, lots of love to everybody out there, and keep on keeping on.